to Chisma and Chaos, available on all podcast platforms, Apple Podcast, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and YouTube Podcast. Today it is a special podcast episode. I am introducing my dear friend, and today's thematic is transgender. We are going to be talking to a friend that I admire, a friend that I consider a sister, and we've been knowing each other for quite some while. It's been quite some years, actually. And I've been trying to get a hold of my dear friend to create this episode. It's been quite hard because due to our work schedules and scheduling conflict. But finally, I have the amazing, the illuminescent, the elusive, the chanteuse from the slums of Skid Row to Bay City. We have Sirena De LaCruz with us today, finally.
Hi.
Sirena De LaCruz, welcome to Chisma and Chaos. How are you?
I'm doing great, great. How are you?
I am excited. I am brimming with joy and excitement.
Did you say rimming?
No,
Oh, I
brimming,
was
my
like,
dear.
her.
I
I
don't
was
know
like,
where your head
her.
is at. Girl, how's your head?
No complaints.
Oh.
JK, JK, JK.
Oh my goodness, I have been dying to get you on the podcast.
Really?
I
Why?
have.
No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
I'm like, okay, bitch.
No, I'm so excited. No, no. I'm kidding. I'm honored. I'm glad we finally found time.
Yes.
Like our
And
schedules have really been just
they've been really,
crossing.
yes, it's been really conflicting. It-
Hmm.
And trying to, and that's the thing. I think that's the hardest part of doing a podcast is trying to schedule people to coordinate and interview them and whatnot. That, in my opinion,
Yeah.
that is the hardest part. Trying to find a free moment to get the guest in.
Hmm. But
Um,
hey, we finally found the time,
I sure did. I was
and
like,
here we are.
yes, here we are, finally. It's like, oh, Sirena, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, um, where should I start? I am from California, born and raised.
Mhm,
I am X amount of years old. We don't need to go over how
mhm,
long I've been here on this planet. I've been here long enough. Um,
mhm,
what else about me? Been on, I've been out and proud for maybe like my whole life, I guess you could say.
uh-huh,
Ever since I was young, everyone kind of knew. So
mhm.
I've been spreading my rainbow all over this city.
You've been spreading your sparkle,
Yeah, spreading sparkle, spreading joy,
as always. That's why I love you.
period.
Mm. Sirena, today's theme is transgender. Can you share with us your journey of self-discovery and when you first realized that you were transgender?
Um, well, I'm like any other normal LGBTQ person.
Uh-huh.
I kind of always known that I was different than other kids when I was very young.
Hmm.
I probably maybe came out as gay. I came out as gay first,
Hmm.
and maybe during my high school years.
Hmm.
Yeah, I think I was in high school when I came out. I lived from my teenage years until my young adult age as gay. I never really thought I fit in. Something always felt off. Like I tried my hardest to be like everyone else, and it was just like this isn't who I am,
You were trying to fit in.
And it was yeah, and it wasn't until I maybe got into like my 30s
Hmm.
that I finally realized, who I was as a person, and since then it's been so much more liberating. Uh I feel like I'm more honest.
Hmm.
Like I have an uh my attitude is very, I don't care. This
Hmm.
is how I feel, and I'm gonna say it.
Exactly.
If I hurt your feelings, I am sorry, but that's how I feel.
True, that's good. When was that moment of epiphany, that moment of clarity where you were like, you know what? I'm not gay, I am trans.
I think what it was um my whole life I've always put other people's feelings and opinions first. Like I've always done my best to make other people comfortable,
Hmm.
even if it meant I would be uncomfortable.
Hmm.
I was always worried about what the next person was going to say about me. And I think finally getting to sit down and kind of self reflect at one of my lowest points in my life,
Hmm.
um, it made me realize, there's nowhere else to go from here but up. So
Exactly.
don't be afraid to be who you truly are.
Hmm.
Just be that person, and whoever loves you, and whoever doesn't. And since then, yeah,
And
this has been the journey, and it just started. I've only been out as trans for maybe the past 5 years.
mhm. What were the hurdles when you finally realized that you're trans and having having that moment when you're like, okay, I have to let my family know, I have to let my friends know. How was that? Like, what were the difficulties of doing that?
I didn't have a lot of difficulties coming out to my family and my friends. First of all, my friends might have known before me. Well, not before me, but they might have known before my family
Hmm.
who I was, because I've always been genuine. I've always been honest with them, because um, they started off as strangers, and they came to know me as a person, and
Hmm.
they weren't obligated to love me the way that they do. So I felt so much comfort with my friends that I've always kept it 100%.
Hmm.
With my family, even when I came out as gay, they've always been very supportive.
Hmm.
I realize how lucky I am to have the family that I do have, because um, none of them have ever shunned me away.
Hmm.
I've never been, casted aside or made to feel different. They were
Hmm.
like, if this is who you are, then we love you.
Oh,
I guess I guess you could say, your family knows you the best
exactly.
sometimes. So I maybe they just kind of knew, and they kind of just waited for me to say something. And once I did, they made me feel just as welcomed, just as loved as I've always felt with them.
Hmm. Do you feel like the relation once you came out? Do you feel like the relationship with your family, with your friends, did it change? Did they treat you differently?
Um, it did change, but I feel like because because of how supportive and how loving my friends and my family are,
Hmm.
I feel like it changed in a way that they're always overly watching how they talk to me.
Hmm.
They correct themselves if they misgender me. If they dead name me, they're immediately apologetic. And um I notice those things. I notice that care that they take into my feelings,
Uh-huh. Oh, that's
which
good.
again is not a lot of people in this community have, and I'm always grateful for that.
Yes, exactly, because a lot of people that come out as trans, they don't have the same experience that you have. You've been really blessed. A lot of people that come
Mhm,
out as trans, they go through such hardship. They either get shunned from the family, they get kicked out, or they just completely get, how can I say, obliterated, like out of thought. And
mhm.
some become homeless, unfortunately, and it's a tough experience.
It is. It's very sad, because not only are they dealing with, the all the not drama, but all the pressure that comes from trying to come out as trans, trying to be authentically you.
Exactly.
That's it's a lot of pressure. It's a lot of um mental stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So to add that, or to add your family basically throwing you away on top of that, it's very sad.
Mm-hmm.
And I, again, I don't want people to think, oh, throwing it in our face how lucky you are. I truly am blessed to have the family and the friends that I have around me.
Oh wow, that's so good. I have always said that within the LGBTQ plus community, I believe that the transgender community is the strongest because there's so much, like you mentioned, there's so much pressure. And
Mm,
I've always said as well that the hardest thing to do in life is to be you, to be who you are as a person, and to
exactly.
know who you are, really. And to come to a decision, such a drastic decision to be like, you know what? This is who I am. This is who I'm going to be. That takes immense strength, and I admire that
Hmm.
so much.
Hmm.
That is something that I bow to the transgender community so much, and I
Hmm.
throw flowers and laurels because it takes a lot of guts. It really,
Yeah,
really does.
which is why it always perplexes me when people say, "Oh, they're snowflakes. Oh,
Mm,
transgender people. They're
hmm
they're mental. They're this and they're that." And it's just like, no, they're some of the strongest people in this world because I mean, you look around you and it feels like empathy is lost almost with
Really
people
true.
nowadays.
Yes.
No one cares about what the next person is feeling, and you know,
hmm
everyone's automatic thing is to attack what's different. And some of these people they're super resilient. I mean,
Very.
I've seen you know this community stand up to things that
Yes.
girl I would have ran away from.
hmm hmm
I would have been scared of, especially in my younger years.
Exactly. It takes a lot of nerve. It takes a lot. You have to be really thick-skinned to
Hmm.
go out there and say, "This is me."
Hmm.
And it's something that I truly admire. It's something that is very inspiring, and it that, like you said, that resilience. It is
Hmm.
unbelievable and just truly inspiring. Now,
Yep.
a question for you. One of my favorite authors, James St. James, always says, I always bring up James St. James because he's so wise.
I
He,
love them.
I know, me too. he, I remember he had mentioned in one of his blogs, he had mentioned how a lot of gay people, a lot of people in the LGBTQ plus community, they usually have somebody that takes them under their wing to teach you the
Mm.
ropes and whatnot. When I came out as gay, I did have a lesbian friend who taught me, well, she was like, don't do this, don't do that, do this, and do this. She would always tell me, don't go wayward. Don't let anybody step on you. Don't let anybody belittle you. Just grow, learn to grow, and whatever people have to say is none of your business. And I was like, oh, and she really did help me out a lot. With you, did you have somebody that took you under their wing?
Um, I did, but they weren't necessarily, members of the LGBTQ
Mhm,
community. I was more taken under the wings of the women in my family,
mhm,
my cousins, my aunts, my grandmother, my mother. I've always been around them more than, my grandfather, my dad, and a lot of the men in my family.
mhm,
And, they I don't want to say they taught me how to be a lady,
uh-huh,
but I picked up a lot of their mannerisms, a lot of the way that they act, they talk, the way that they carry themselves, even dance and their appreciation for all things quote unquote feminine.
mhm,
It I really took a lot of lessons
yeah,
from them,
mhm,
and I felt like it helped build the person that I was, even back when I was just um when I was just a gay boy,
Mhm.
you know? I was always very effeminate, very, I had an aunt that used to call me the diva.
Oh,
So
cute.
I always carried myself like that,
Mhm.
even though back then I was a little more shy than now.
Mhm.
But, I've always had those qualities, and it's thanks to the women in my family.
Mhm. Oh, that's nice. So you were surrounded by really strong women that inspired your
Hmm.
strength. That's amazing. And in the me and you are both from the same generation, pretty much. Growing up, we didn't really have that much well, the transgender community didn't have that much visibility. The only one that I can think of, the earliest one actually, the first one was Amanda Lepore when she was with the whole Club Kids, and that was the only person, the first one that I knew about. Was there one trans icon that you looked up to that not inspired you, but that you were like, oh, that's what trans is?
Um, I I don't know if I can remember one when I was like that inspired me when I was younger. I was more inspired, uh, honestly, that I looked up to were like drag icons.
Mm-hmm.
I looked up to RuPaul because
Oh,
I would
a
watch the
legend.
RuPaul show and see how hilarious she was, and
Mhm.
I used to watch movies like um Pink Flamingos.
Oh
Even
my
though I should
goodness.
not have been watching those kinds of movies,
With
I,
Divine,
I
the
was
John
watching movies so
Waterfalls.
Divine. Um,
Yes.
who else? Uh, even this music icons. Pete Burns was somebody. My mom was a
Oh,
huge '80s person, so you know, Dead or Alive was something that I heard constantly in the house.
yes.
I may have looked at like the cassette tapes
Mhm.
that my
Oh.
mom had and been like, "Is that a boy or is that a girl?"
Mhm.
You know. But I was just like, I want to be that, like that the
Yes.
fierceness that I saw in there. I've always wanted to be
The business.
that.
That's awesome. Yes. Oh my God, Pete Burns. What a legend. That is someone that, yeah, I recall Pete Burns as well. Um,
Hmm.
Hey, did you ever reach out to like a trans group for support?
Like just in general, no.
Mhm.
I've always been very close knit with like my the people that I chose to be friends with. I'm a
Mhm.
very friendly person,
Mhm.
so I can and a very much a social butterfly,
Mhm.
but I've always been very close knit with certain people, and um I've unfortunately, when I was younger, I didn't really reach out to the LGBT community, and I've always been closer with my girlfriends, with
Mhm.
my cousins. So I wish that I had that opportunity, but now as an adult, I feel like I go out more, and I commingle with more members of the community, and um,
Mhm.
I don't know. I guess thinking about it right now, maybe it was just missed opportunities,
Yes.
Yeah. I wish I had done that. I wish I had the strength to wander out there on my own and reach out to them, because I feel like I'm such a newbie in the community.
One thing that I admire about the trans community is that it is such a tight-knit group. There's a lot of support within
Mhm.
the group. For an example, and let's keep it fucking real. In the gay community, there is so much animosity and so much cattiness that, you know, it's like so much like not rivalry, but there is just cattiness pretty much. There's a lot of bitchiness. And in the
It's a lot of like territorial theme
yes, pretty
almost,
much. Like this is my
like
fucking
cats fighting.
hood. Like don't step yo don't step out of line. It's like goddamn. And you don't see that in the trans community. Like they're so tight knit. I love that. There's so
Mhm,
much support within the group.
mhm.
It's amazing. I wish the gay community was more like that, which is not. Let's keep it real.
It's not. I mean, you go on social media now, and you
Oh
know,
my goodness.
with this political climate, you see a bunch of people who are against trans. I mean, the U.S. government themselves are literally erasing the T in LGBT in their websites. Like, it's
Oh,
ridiculous.
it is a
And then you
mess.
also see it within our own community. You see it
Yes.
on posts that people are just so anti-trans, and it's like,
Hmm.
how can you be a part of this community, this community that's supposed to be all encompassing, all welcoming, and leave out the people that honestly are the pioneers for the rights that we have now.
Exactly.
Marsha P. Johnson was the first person at Stonewall
Yes, in New York City.
to start all of it.
Hmm.
Basically, the riots.
Exactly. If I'm not mistaken, she was the first one to throw the brick.
hmm and she was trans. I feel like this younger generation is they have an entitlement to them
Yes.
that they don't realize how lucky they are to.
Yes, I agree. This generation doesn't, you have to know your history. And as the
Mhm,
saying goes, we walk on the shoulders of giants, of people that paved the
mhm,
way, people that opened the door and broke and shattered those barriers. And
mhm,
unfortunately, this generation, they don't give a fuck about history, the history that, like, where did you come from? Well, who paved the way for you to stand where you stand?
mhm.
And it's sad.
It really is.
Thankfully, though, as you mentioned, RuPaul's Drag Race. Oh, no, you did not mention that, but RuPaul's Drag Race has truly changed the dynamic. It has opened
Mhm,
so many doors for trans people. Really, like the list goes on and on and on.
mhm.
And my next question is, how do you feel about the current representation of transgender individuals?
That's one thing I will say. At this day and age, you see it a lot more
Mhm.
on TV. You hear about it even on the radio. There's so many there's so many trans artists out there that um, are very good role models for
Yes.
whoever feels like they might be different, or they might um, just be the quote unquote weirdo.
Hmm.
You have people like Kim Petras, you have
Yes.
supermodels, you have the ladies on Drag Race.
Yes.
Valentina just recently came out as trans, and she's a huge icon for a lot of Drag Race fans. You have people like Gia Gunn and Carmen Carrera.
Hmm.
It's amazing that I can now use more than one hand
Hmm.
to count how many trans superstars there are out there that are household names.
Hmm. Well, Laverne Cox, when she came out on
Exactly.
Orange is the New Black,
Mhm,
Carla Sofia um, Gascon, my bad. She got nominated for an
mhm,
Oscar. Unfortunately, her whole issue overshadowed that. But
mhm,
a trans nominee for the Oscar, that is quite
mhm.
historic.
Yeah,
I was like,
openly trans at that.
mm-hmm, that is impressive. And
Yeah.
the dynamics changing slowly, but it is changing.
hmm
Are there any specific figures or any persons that are inspiring you right now that you're like, wow, if that person can do it, I can do it?
Um, there's so many.
Hmm.
I'm a huge like pop culture to me is everything. Like,
I know.
you could tell me about this person's putting out a new song, and I already know about it. I might even know the lyrics and the choreography already.
Hmm.
Um, but a major one that probably stands out to me, even though she's not necessarily trans, it has to be Mother Monster herself, Lady Gaga.
She has been such
Just
an advocate.
she's not only just an advocate, but she's she's putting a voice platforms that we may or may not have a reach to, like she's always been pro LGBTQ at the was it the Grammys, where she said trans people aren't invisible and they
She
deserve love and deserve,
always gives a shout out to the LGBTQ plus community.
she's always very caring of us, and she humanizes us, you
Hmm.
know. To people who are against us, we're just, we're nothing, we're dirt, we're sin, whatever.
Hmm.
But she makes us, at least for me, she makes me feel human.
Isn't it crazy how female artists such as Lady Gaga, Christina Aguilera, Madonna, Cher, the list goes on, how they are so openly willing to advocate genuinely, not do it for promotional reason, um, to advocate for the LGBT plus community, yet male artists don't. They shy away from it. I mean, Ricky Martin does it, but not on a grand scale that female artists do. I don't get that. It's like, why are they afraid to? Oh, actually, no. I was gonna say Bad Bunny, but no, he does not. Well, he kind of does. No, he kind of does.
He kind of does. Yes, he
Yeah.
does. But it's not to like the extent that a lot of female artists
Yes, they really go all
do.
out there.
Hmm. I think that's why we as we as LGBTQ people, we venerate these women. They're
Of course.
Mother Monster, they're God, they're they're
Mhm.
Beyonce. Like
Oh, don't get me started with that
we
one.
we worship these women because they advocate for us. They know who it is that supports them, and they show that mutual support and appreciation.
Hmm.
I
That
wish more male artists would be more outspoken for the um, LGBTQ community.
it's that stigma. It really is. It's like, oh, if they support a
And,
trans person or the trans community, right away they're gonna think, oh, he's low key,
mhm.
undercover, and it's like, oh, come on, please.
Please.
Exactly. Like, let's get real.
Let's be for real. Let's be honest. No, it's just, and that's not to say that there's not any of them out there. There are plenty out there.
Mhm.
It's just not as it's not as common.
Exactly. It's it's not as openly, it's not as supportive as the female artists have done.
Mhm.
Serena, what are some of the common misconceptions or stereotypes about transgender people that you would address?
I feel like a lot of at least that I come across, is that I'm 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 just playing dress up.
Hmm.
Like sometimes they just think, oh, that's just a man in a dress, and it's more than that. How I portray myself outwardly has nothing to do with who I am as a person.
Hmm.
Being trans. Who said it? Was it Gia Gunn that said it, that um or oh no, I think it was Monica Beverly Hills who said,
From
drag is what
Chicago?
I do, trans is who I am.
Yes, it was Monica Beverly Hills, a Chicago
Yeah.
native from my hometown.
Hmm. Yeah,
Um,
she encompassed it perfectly. Trans isn't have to do with how you look. Trans is how you feel, who you are.
that is
I feel
very
like that's
true.
one misconception. Another one is that I encounter a lot is sometimes I'm made to feel like I'm nothing more than a fetish,
Oh, that is good. I'm glad you touched that
and
topic.
I'm just like a sex toy, or like this is just a sex, for me to get off. And
Mhm.
it's not like, I'm human. I have feelings. I have interests. I have hobbies. There's a whole person behind
Mhm.
what they think trans is.
Exactly. And like you said, it a lot of people think that being trans is a sexual thing. It's not.
Mm-mm.
It's not a fetish. it's a lifestyle. It is a,
Mm-hmm.
it's being who you are. It's not, nothing, it doesn't have anything to do with sexual objectification at all whatsoever. I don't know. A lot of heterosexual men see it that way.
Mm-hmm.
They think that trans women are prostitutes, and it's not the case. It has
Like,
nothing to do with that whatsoever.
mm-hmm.
And that is
And
a very big
it's
misconception.
yeah, and it's very dehumanizing at
It
times.
is.
There's sometimes where I'll admit, like, when I'm bored, I'll play into it, whatever. If it helps them get off, it'll help me get off, whatever. But there are times where you're just kind of like, what am I doing? Like,
Hmm.
what are you asking of me? Like, why,
Why feed the beast?
why, yeah, why are you here? If why, I don't know how to explain it.
Hmm.
It's just why. That's the main question. Why?
Exactly. Hmm. I agree, and it's like, oh no, that misconception definitely has to be shattered. It has to be
Mm-hmm.
a light needs to be shown, a shine on that ideology that it's a fetish, that it's sexual, driven. It is not, and people need
It's
to
not.
understand that.
Yeah. Sometimes I feel like they see me as like all I'm doing is thinking about sex 24/7, and
Hmm.
it's not. Like,
Exactly.
sometimes I'm wondering, what am I gonna eat for lunch? Or, you
Yeah.
know, damn, did I turn off the stove before I left home? Like,
Exactly. I am human. I am skin and bone.
mm,
I have thoughts. I have
yeah,
feelings. Like,
there's emotions here.
exactly. See, Dana, have you had a situation a transphobic situation?
Like, where I've experienced it, of
Mm,
course,
mhm.
I feel like I experience it on the daily. I
Really?
always, yeah, I get weird looks everywhere that I go. Like, people are always staring, or people always have something slick to say, or under their breath,
Well,
just loud enough for me to barely hear it.
mhm,
And it's come to a point where I don't want to say I'm desensitized to it.
mhm,
It's more like I've learned to build walls.
mhm,
If it feels like it's coming from a negative place, I automatically ignore it.
mhm,
If someone has something slick to say to me,
mhm,
I'm just like, whatever, be unhappy if that's what makes you happy. But I spent a lot of time building myself up
exactly.
in these 5 years that I've been this way. Even before, I can say, even as when I was just claiming to be just a gay boy,
Mhm,
I've had to learn to build a tougher skin.
mhm,
When I first came out to my mother, she was very supportive, and she goes, I support you, I love you, and I'm always gonna be there for you, but
mhm,
you have to know that this world will not be kind to you.
mm,
And there's gonna be someone out there that always has something negative to say about you. And it's gonna
exactly.
be up to you to either you take it in and you let it bother you, or you let it go.
Mhm. Wise
And
words.
and you're gonna be bombarded by these emotions for the rest of your life.
Mhm,
And it's true. So she told me that, I kind of had to, like, almost take like a breather,
mhm,
and take a deep breath, and realize what other people have to say, or what other people think, has no real effect on me. Like, they
mhm,
don't pay my bills, they don't pay me money,
exactly.
they don't feed me, they don't clothe me. I do that.
How do you deal with transphobia, whether it's subtle or overt in a day-to-day life?
I honestly, I ignore it. Like, it's just, if you you have something negative to say, I'm just gonna come. You don't exist to me. Like,
Mhm,
you could be yelling in my ear like not even maybe like an inch away from my face, and I won't even. I'm not gonna look at you. I'm not gonna acknowledge it.
Mm-hmm.
I learned that as long as I don't make, or most of the time, as long as I don't make it an issue,
Mm-hmm.
I can walk away from it. Once you put your hands on me, that's a different story. I'm swinging,
Of
but
course.
most of the time,
You're gonna knock a
I
bitch's
ignore it.
light out? Shit.
Most of the time, I ignore it, or I pull a gun out of my pocket, and no.
Mhm.
um, yeah, I literally just ignore it. I get, and sometimes on social media, I'll make a comment, and somebody will have something stupid to say, and I block them.
Mhm.
I don't have time for this.
Exactly.
I'm too busy focused on being happy and trying to just to live my life that I just don't have time for negativity.
Exactly. It's like, whatever. Sticks and stones may break your bones, but your words are nothing.
Mm-mm.
Oh, what's that other childhood adage that they would always tell me? It would be, I am rubber, you are glue.
If you don't care, whatever you
What
say
you
to me
say to
bounces
me
back to me.
bounces back to you.
Yeah,
Oh my God. Yes, that's my mantra. Just kidding.
life's motto.
Right. I'm rubber, you glue. That's funny. Um, Sirena, what impact has your journey had on your mental or emotional health, and how have you worked through any of that struggle?
You know, it's been tough.
Hmm.
It's even with learning to ignore the negativity in life.
Hmm.
I'm human, and sometimes I do let it affect me.
Hmm.
Um, Sometimes I have to take a moment and be by myself because there's so much negativity in this world. You can turn on the news and you'll see it. You can go on Facebook and you can see comments, and you know you you can hear it in everyday conversation. Sometimes you see people protesting
Exactly.
against people just trying to be who they are. So it does take a toll on you. For me personally, I've always tried to be uplifting
Hmm.
and bright and caring, and you know, I try to be outwardly happy
Hmm.
for not just my family, my friends, but for like people I run into, people I walk by. I never want to give off that vibe of that there's negativity around me.
Hmm.
That's just not who I am, and sometimes that's exhausting.
It is.
It's exhausting having to be happy, having to just be uplifting, even if sometimes I'm not doing it for others and I'm doing it for myself. It's still very exhausting, and there are times where when I'm alone,
Hmm.
I have negative thoughts, and I have these very dark moments,
Hmm.
and sometimes you just want to be like, this is too much, and I want it to end.
Hmm.
And I've gone through uh, personal things in my life that I've experienced suicide,
Oh.
with very close people in my life. And while I don't want to say I'm glad that it happened, to have experienced that firsthand
Hmm.
helps me realize that that is not the route that I want to take. And it gives me the strength to bring myself up from that bottom point I'm at
Exactly.
and continue to go up towards being that happy person that I want to be.
Exactly. That light.
hmm I it's tough, but it's enough. It's
Hmm.
enough strength for me to get there, and that's what pushes me, and it motivates me, and it also helps me realize that I may not be the only person that's going through this, and I don't know what the next person, what battles they're fighting. So it helps me be almost like, hey, today's a good day, and today we're gonna be fine, and we're gonna have a good one. It's gonna be amazing.
Exactly.
Uplifting. That's the word I was thinking of. It helps me be uplifting for the next person, because I don't know what they're going through. They might be going through the same thing I'm going through.
Exactly.
And sometimes that's what I want to hear.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I want somebody to tell me, hey, it's going to be okay. And I do have that. I do have that kind of support in my life, and I appreciate it. So I try to do that for others.
How do you maintain your mental well-being in a world that sometimes can feel hostile or unsupportive?
I I focus. My main focus in my life is myself.
Good.
Everything that I do is, am I happy doing it? Does it make me happy? Does it make me feel good? Is it hurting anyone?
Mm-hmm.
And as long as I'm I'm not hurting anybody, but I am happy and I am proud of the decisions that I make, then I'm good.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like a lot of people put a huge emphasis on pleasing others, or getting the likes on social media, or oh, this person feels, this is cool to do, so I'm gonna do it too.
Social media can be a beast. It could be a
Yeah,
monster.
yeah. A lot of people, especially this younger generation, they feel like they have to follow that norm.
Mm-hmm.
Those,
Especially
those,
with
those.
influencers and whatnot, it's
Mhm.
overwhelming.
Yeah, they want to be just like that person, and I'm not. I'm not that person. I'm focused on what makes me happy, and I realize that as long as I'm happy, I give off that vibe of happiness, and that's all. That's all that matters to me. I don't. That's how I deal with negativity. If you want to be nasty and sad, you do that.
Mm-hmm.
But me, I'm gonna go over here and be happy.
Exactly. And that's all that matters, as long as you're happy. What advice would you give to someone that is struggling with gender identity or isolation?
My advice to someone uh, who's going through things like that is just focus on you. You're the most important person in your life. No one is gonna ever love you and support you as much as you love and support yourself. You're your own number one fan. You are the love of your own life. And your main focus should be you. It shouldn't be what this person has to say about you or what that person said about you. No, those outside opinions shouldn't mean anything.
Exactly.
Focus on you, focus on what makes you happy, and as long as you're not hurting anybody, and as long as you're not hurting yourself,
Hmm.
you're fine.
Exactly. Love has to
Even
come from within.
hmm and when you love yourself truly, like the way I feel I love myself, because girl, let me tell you, you go on my social media, you're gonna see nothing but selfies, and I
Oh,
don't post those for I don't post those for anybody else, but for me to go on there, go through my photos, and be like, "Ooh, I ate that day.
you
Ooh, I
know,
look cute right here."
I'm glad you mentioned that. A lot of people criticize others for taking selfies. I don't, because in my opinion, I'm like, if you take selfies, I mean, it could be either because you, like you said, because you love yourself, or because you want to burn that into your photo bucket and be like, look, years ahead, look back into it and be like, ooh, I looked great when I was younger, you know? Keep that memory
Yeah.
alive. I mean, yes, it's in in your memory vault in your brain, but you also have something that you could look into. You know, like, oh, I could look into
Yeah.
it really.
said, a lot of the pictures that I post, it's not for you guys. I don't care if you're tired of seeing me. I'm not. I love seeing myself.
Exactly.
I remember in beauty school, because I went to beauty school like during the pandemic times. We had to do at home learning, so we were on the Zoom calls. And I swear sometimes I felt like the instructor had to like snap her fingers and be like, hey, Sirena, look over here. Because I was too busy looking at myself in the little boxes. Too busy like trying to make sure, my chin looks big here. Let me move my head down a little bit.
See, there's a big misconception that in the trans community, there is a lot of drug use, a lot of alcoholism, a lot of vices. Do you believe that to be true?
I can't say whether I believe it to be true or not because I've never personally experienced it. I don't. I know it's gonna sound weird to say. I don't have a lot of trans friends. I have a couple here and there. I'm a very isolated person. Like I want to be by myself, and I feel like I do that because again, I'm trying to focus on who I am as a person,
And protect yourself.
and protect myself. So I don't put myself out there.
To me,
I don't.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, I don't see that a lot. I hear about it, and I've even seen it on TV, and you see it on YouTube. Sometimes you have videos of people who pour themselves out and they admit to it. But me personally, I've never used it. The only thing I can say is that sometimes I would get messages from people when I used to be on like Grindr and those kind of apps, asking me if I partied.
Oh my God! Don't get me started with that. Oh my God! Let me segue here a little bit. I remember back in the day when I used to be young. I remember I was at a nightclub. It was at Spin nightclub in Chicago, and somebody came up to me and was like, "Oh, do you party?" I was like, "Well, duh." I'm like, "Don't you see me dancing it up here? I'm partying it up, you fucking idiot." And and the guy was like, "Okay." He just walked away, and I told my friend, I was like, "This dumbass asked me if I like to party." I'm like, "What kind of question is that? We're in a nightclub." And my friend was like, "You dumbass." He was like, party meat, it's a code word for drug use. I was like, oh, I was like, now I feel stupid.
Yeah, no, like I said, I've gotten a couple messages on those apps where they ask me if I partied, and I'm just like, what are you talking about? And then they'll like send me pictures of like, I've literally received pictures of a guy holding crack rocks.
Oh my God.
And I was just like, block?
Exactly, yes.
So it's like, damn, who do you think I am? Like,
right.
You were really brave to show me that. What is going on?
Oh my God. From personal confessions that I've had from my trans friends, that is such another misconception. No, drug use is not rampant in the trans community. That is not true. I mean, obviously, to each their own, but it is a misconception. It is not the leading force behind the trans movement or the trans community. That is such a lie. I don't know where that misconception came from, probably because of a lot of trans personalities and influencers that are up and coming. They're always at nightclubs. It isn't always about drugs in nightclubs, and it's not always about that. It really isn't. The basis of being in a nightclub is to have fun and dance and have the music blasting and blaring. Not, it's not always about drug use.
And like I said, like I've never experienced it firsthand.
Neither have I.
I grew up around it. I'm not gonna lie. Like I've had family who have had, heavy drug use in their lives. So I've witnessed it as a young person that I don't want to
Exactly
partake in it as an adult, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen what drugs do to your jaws and to your teeth,
Oh,
and I'm too pretty for
right? Like, cosmetic surgery is way too expensive. Shit.
yeah, girl.
Shit. No. No, no, no. And when I used to be a little club hopper, there was all it was always in the known. Like there's certain clubs that you would know about that it was like mainly drug use, and you would be like, okay, you stay away from that. Now, if you go to that, that's your decision, obviously. No judgment whatsoever to anyone, but
Mm-mm.
you know what environment to choose. And I remember out of curiosity, I did go to one. I'm not going to mention the name of the club because it's still ongoing. But I remember I went to it and I was like, holy crap. I was like, whoa. I was like, this is true. And I was like, me and my sidekick, we were like, we need to get the F out. And I was like,
You were like, this is not it.
no. I darted for the door. I was like, bye. I was like, this is not cool. I was like, no, 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 no. I was like, I'm not having this. But yeah, that is such a misconception. It's not true. And it's something that has to be shine light into that. That is not true.
Mhm.
Um, do you, I have a fun fact story. When I used to work, this is back in the day at Dunkin' Donuts, I remember that I had met my coworker. He was a young gay boy, and he was so introverted, and I was like, why are you so introverted? I'm like, you have such a big personality. I was like, why don't you let it shine out to the world? I was like, you need to let yourself be. And he was just so clammed up. And I was like, let me ask you a personal question. I was like, if you don't have to answer it, if you don't want to, I was like, are you trans? And he flipped out. He was like, "No, I'm not." He was like, "Oh my God, how can you say that?" And he just got really offended. And I was like, "I'm sorry." I'm not trying to offend you. I was like, "I'm just asking because I knew it. I just felt it. I was like, I know he is trans." And I kid you not, the next day he came up to me, pulled me aside, and he was like, "I'm glad you asked me that question because yes, I do consider myself trans." And I was like, I was like,
Aw.
yes, it was such a heartfelt moment. And he started crying. I started crying. And I was like, oh my God. I was like, well, be who you are. And shout out to Andrea. Oh, by the way, I asked her, I was like, can I share that story? And she was like, yes, you can, of course. So, Andrea, shout out to you, baby girl. I know you are doing great things. Now she's motivating people. I'm so proud of her. You could consider me a trans faja. Really? I was like, oh my girl, she's all grown up. Santi, with you, do you feel you're inspiring this new generation with your empowerment, with your self-confidence?
I feel like I, I may not be too as grand of a scale as like a lot of what you see on social media.
Uh-huh.
I'm not an influencer. I'm not out there on all my stuff is private.
Hmm.
Only close friends and families can
Oh,
see.
my shit is public.
But I feel like there's instances, where I may have not inspired but encouraged
Hmm.
others to be um more not authentic. I don't want to say they were fake, but more authentically themselves. I have nieces and nephews that they're very quiet and
Hmm.
very shy,
Hmm.
and I've always felt like I've encouraged them to just you know be more outgoing,
Hmm.
just because they see me and I'm this happy-go-lucky person in front of them, and
Hmm.
they like that and they have fun. So I always tell them, don't worry about what somebody has to say about you. Just be
Exactly.
happy. And they're not, they're kids. They're not thinking about. At least I don't. But,
Hmm.
you know, if they're trans or gay or whatever. It's just in general. Just be happy. You know, trust me, your youth is gonna fly by, and you're gonna be like, damn, I wish I was a kid again.
Yes.
So I always tell them, go ahead, girl, be loud. Make yourself known. If you feel a certain way, speak up.
Yes, I agree. I have always said that when you know who you are as a person, you become a beacon of light, a beacon of inspiration. You allow others to be who they truly are, and you break that fear that they have, that fear of being genuine, being honest, and true to themselves. And when you are a real person, when you are genuine, you you allow others around you to be inspired and to flow that energy out, to let that energy flow out and that genuine, true to themselves being be there.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe that you are doing that in strides.
I'm not gonna say like I try, like I'm out there doing like specifically that, but I mean, I guess now thinking about it, I do see it. Even in my work, sometimes we have customers that come in and at first they're very quiet and they don't want to say anything, and they just want to be in and out, and slowly over time I've noticed that they're more open with me, and they joke around with me now, and we carry on conversations. And my coworkers pointed out to me all the time, they're like, oh my god, like she used to be so quiet, but you got that confidence almost out of her. So yeah, I guess I'm out there doing that.
What are your hopes for the future of the transgender community?
My hope for the trans community is that we get the respect that we deserve. I feel like sometimes people forget that we're human, and we all bleed the same blood, we breathe the same air, and just because it's against whatever you believe in, you don't have to go against it. You don't have to vote against it. You don't have to fight against it. If you want no part of that community, leave them alone. They're just living their lives. We're just trying to live our day-to-day life. We're not trying to take over the world or take your children or mess with people's minds. We're not trying to do that. We just want to be ourselves. And I hope that one day it can just be that, and we can look back and be like, dang, you remember how crazy it used to be?
Exactly. That's how I always think about that. I'm always like, in the future, we're gonna look back and we're gonna be like, how silly was that mentality? Just the way that we look back into women's rights, like when women didn't have the power to vote, we look back at it, we're like, how did that happen? And that's how I feel with the trans community. We're in the future generations gonna look back and be like, what, really? This ruffled feathers, this plucked your feather?
This caused you concern?
Exactly.
Like, yeah, I hope and pray that one day it would just be like, oh, you're trans, that's cool.
Exactly. Or it's just gonna be so nonchalant. It's gonna be like, oh, whatever.
It's gonna be like, oh, you're human, that's cool.
Exactly. Yeah. For those who are just on the last note, for those who are just beginning their journey, what would you offer? Like, what would you say to offer support or encouragement?
I would say do the opposite of what I did and do not isolate yourself. Reach out to your local gay, lesbian, trans communities. Go out there and research what resources they have for you, or even what safe spaces that they have, because now that I'm putting myself out there, I see that community, and I see the support that we have for each other within our community. And I encourage these people, go out there and do that. Go out there and look for a friend that can understand you, that you can pour yourself out to, and just be there for you, and who better to do that than someone who's also going through that journey. I wish I did. I wish that I had mentors or guides through this lifestyle because, while I did have the support of my family, they also didn't know nothing about this. They're learning about it as I'm learning about it. So go out there, reach out. Don't be afraid to introduce yourself to the world. And also, don't forget to put yourself first.
Exactly.
That's the most important thing. Most important advice I can tell anybody is put you first.
Exactly. Sirena, on a closing statement, is there anything else you would like to say?
Be happy. Be kind.
And rewind.
World peace. Rewind. Make sure before you turn in those videotapes to Blockbuster. He said rewind. Oh my God. No, just be kind, be happy. Don't hurt nobody. Exactly. Don't hurt anything either. Don't be out there hurting animals.
Don't go out there smacking No. Don't be hurting nobody.
Yeah.
Oh my God, my dear, my love, you are such an inspiration. Your strength, your light, your passion, you are such an inspiration, and you have cemented your message officially on this podcast and on all the podcast platforms that are available. Anybody can now you could be Googled, honey.
Google, girl.
You're gonna be telling your friends, Google me, bitch.
We were recording this whole time? I thought we were just having a conversation.
Don't say that. I'm gonna get a lawsuit then.
You'll be hearing from my lawyer.
Oh my goodness. It was such a pleasure having you on Chisma and Chaos. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your positive energy, your positive words, and the encouragement you are sharing. And keep being strong, my dear.
I will. You too. Everyone out there who is listening, be strong. If no one told you, I love you.
Oh,
whoever you are.
To all my audience, to everybody listening, love. And that is the closing note on Chisma and Chaos. Thank you so much for listening. Ciao, ciao.
Bye.